Africa viewers, we are here at Grindrod in Pretoria, and I think you're in for a treat as we go through the refurbishment process of the 13 locomotives that came back last year in November from Sierra Leone. I'm with Jacques, and Jacques is going to take me through the refurbishment process and program that they have underway with the Sierra Leone locomotives that returned not so long ago.
So glad to report we've concluded the first 4 of the 13. We plan to finish the next 3 end of April, and then we'll finish the next 3 in, let's call it Q3, and then the last 3 Q4.
The 13 that came back, they're all in different stages. Correct. In terms of what they need.
Correct.
But generally speaking,
I mean, it depends on your level of service. As you know, you get a 12-year service, you get a 6-year service, and then you get a normal annual service. So some of the locomotives only require, let's call it an annual service.
Yeah. With
new technology, brake tests, new wheels, sandboxes, etc. So that's the first 4 done. Some of the other locos, we obviously want to fast track our program to be ready for opportunities. Mm-hmm. So you do an assessment of the locomotives on condition based, you replace the parts required. So the next 3, let's say we call it between an annual and a 6-year service, and then the last ones we will do a proper overall service on those. So it's a combination.
Do they need to be recertified by the safety regulator?
GL30 is a locomotive that has run on SA networks before. Locomotive type is very similar to EMD type 39, which is used by Transnet. So yes, the locomotive is certified by RSR to be compliant to run on SA networks.
Has there been anything for you stand out in terms of the refurbishment program, different to how things used to be done?
Some of our upgrades include going to CCB2 systems, because not all of the locomotives were on those systems. Okay. Again, which is a SA and an RSR requirement. So it included the upgrade of our braking systems to be CCB2, do the major service in Pretoria, then we deploy it to our sites. We've got our staff that can then maintain and run it, and have the critical space for that fleet to keep 90% plus available.
The history of this facility and obviously the company itself, there is the capability and the capacity to manage internally this kind of refurbishment program. I think maybe just walk me through what that capability is.
We've probably done now 90% of our fleet through this facility. So we've now been through the first, let's call it in 2018, 2019, pre-COVID. We've done the first 6-year services. Some of these locomotives we actually requires close to a 12-year service. Oh, wow. So we've now done both. But to answer your question, we've done now 90% of our own fleet. So yeah, we're well familiar with this locomotive type, the reliability, what it can and can't do, our online tracking systems, etc. So yes, it's a locomotive type we now
very familiar with.
Very familiar with.
Joining me to take me through the facility is Tshepo. Quite a big project that you've got on the go here.
As you can see, the loco that we are standing next to, this is how we receive the locos from Sierra Leone. And then I'll take you through the process of how we start with our maintenance refurbishments to a point whereby we have a loco being released, or the final product of the locomotive. As you can see behind me, we've got this loco which is already on the production line. So the process here of receiving locos is we will start off with an assessment to determine what type of repairs are required to be done on a loco, whereby we are having a minor and major repairs. So for instance, on this loco, we are currently doing major repairs on the loco, whereby you can see the gentlemen that are currently working on this loco. They've already started with the stripping of components, and then once the stripping has been done, we will clean them, qualify them, and then do an inspection to determine the condition. If there's a need for us to send them out for repairs, that process will also follow suit. Next to me here is one other loco which has been stripped. So this simply means that the things like your engine, the alternator has been removed, and then over to the other side it's our engine section, traction motor base section, whereby they are doing the complete overhaul of all the components that have been stripped from this particular loco. Once the refurbishment or overhauling has been done, we will reassemble the locomotive and then take it through the next phase, whereby it will go through testing and painting, which will be the final stage of our refurbishment process. Right behind me here, it's the final product of one of the 13 Sierra Leone locos we brought back last year. As you can see, it is nicely painted, and all the refurbishment that was supposed to be done here, the guys managed to complete. For all the remaining locos that we saw inside the workshop, the final product will come to what we are seeing here.
Where we see ourselves going, the group as Grindrod, being in logistics for over 100 years. And the rail business is really a business where we see we can then add value in terms of logistics. How do we integrate that? We see ourselves as a rail operator going forward. We have the opportunity in terms of South Africa that has never been there. It's one of the options that we're looking at. Over the past so many years, we've been focusing on Southern Africa. To a large extent, we've been in the leasing business, and we see ourselves evolving that into more an operator. We will still have that to some extent over the years as we evolve our business. That's why we have been working hard the last few months to bring back the 13 locomotives that came from Sierra Leone, and hopefully we can then deploy it over the next 6 to 12 months. And this will then determine where we will be going in terms of taking our rail business. We know that within the rail operator space, there's been a lot of neglect in terms of maintenance, whether it's rail infrastructure, whether it's rolling stock. So we have, in the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time with the rail operators in the region to see how we can be a strategic partner in terms of supporting the rolling stock, because that's where we want to focus on, not necessarily in terms of rail infrastructure, and then extending our business. For us in Africa, if there's opportunities for leasing where we can come in, we will explore that. To a large extent, we see ourselves rather as a strategic partner of the rail operators within the region, and how can we extend the arm. With the concession that we have with BBR over the last, say, 20 years, we do realize that there's a bigger impact that we can make, for example, in terms of the North-South corridor, where BBR is just a section of that. And those are some of the opportunities and strategic partnerships that we are busy developing and see how we can expand.
From a mining perspective, how vital is the use of rail in bringing down that cost, getting the product to market?
We believe there is a strategic space for the rail. Ensure that we create that economies of scale for the mining industry. We all know that there's a lot of factors in terms of where rail can provide a better service. So it's the economies of scale. It is about safety. It's to ensure that when you move commodities, you move it in bulk. So, for example, to ensure that there's also a better flow in terms of loading and offloading from the mine itself. It's less activity compared to other modes of transport that you have on the table at the moment.
Is that going to feed into your corridor strategy? I feel that in terms of, especially from the mining perspective, that there is a bit of a corridor strategy in place.
For Grindrod, from a group perspective, of course, we have more strength in certain corridors at the moment. And that would be our number one in terms of rail priority. And as time evolves, we grow our business, we will then see which corridors makes more sense for us. So it's where we are stronger at the moment, that's where we will focus on. And then we will look at secondary options in the medium to long term. South Africa is a critical market for us. What makes sense for the South African market? in terms of our existing locomotives and then going into the future, because there's big offerings in terms of volumes going forward. Our strategy will then have to evolve in terms of having the appropriate rolling stock for that.
And then that's when the procurement process,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
for the new trains and the
Yeah.
wagons will
Yeah.
come through.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's quite a big program as well. I mean, how many trains are you looking at buying?
We all know that what's the deficit in terms of the lost volumes over the past 7+ years. It also depends on the number of slots and which corridors we will focus on.